presence, Miss Habiba Kahinde. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you. Thanks. Really nice to see you guys again.
So without much ado, I want to welcome Camilla Nontra.
Yay!
Oh my goodness. I should come to you every day when I need.
Correct. This is Sudan.
Wow.
Sudan. Believe it or not, Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt.
Interesting.
Begin to think in a Pan-African way, because they now see that their conditions are not just about that local space, but the condition is linked to all of the other.
Good morning from San Diego, everyone. Hello. We thank you for joining us. My name is Fred Nontra, co-host of the PanAfricana show. We start by thanking God. By Him we live and move and have our being. And we're gonna hand it over to Jesse, my co-host.
What's going on, everybody? First and foremost, thank you all for joining us for another week. We wanted to do a discussion. I'm hoping that we have some people who come in and who chime in. But I have a tendency from time to time to get on TikTok, and it seems like every few weeks there's an attempt made to divide people in the diaspora, in the Black diaspora, right? So there'll be, it started with food challenges, and then there's like all kinds of other challenges that have come up. And I'm just curious as to where this comes from. So today, my hope is that we can get into dispelling some of the mythological things that people have accepted. We can deal with some of the pain and hurt that has been caused within our diaspora, because one of the things I want to emphasize is that you never see people who are members of the white diaspora like criticizing each other to the extent that we do. You don't see white Americans saying, oh, you're a white British person, so you don't matter. Like, you don't see that. But for some reason, it's like every few weeks, there's an opportunity for further discourse and further dividing. And we can't get further as a global community until we deal with some of these things that we understand kind of who we are. And we understand that ultimately, I know, this might be scary to some people, but we all have some similar ancestry somewhere. There's somebody who is our great grandma somewhere looking at us acting stupid. So I want to use today to have a discussion so that we can dispel what's going on and kind of deal with some of the negativity so that we can get it out of here and start building this bridge to connect our diaspora. Can you
hear us?
Can you hear us?
Oh, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Because she had said that.
All right. So we're going to get our sister on here so we can have commentary. And good morning, Stephanie. I see you in here. She's
hi, Stephanie.
Is multitasking. Thanks for joining.
All right. So I'm going to say this. I think in my humble opinion, and I believe that's the truth, but in my experience, when I see on both sides, when I met people who have these notions about the other side, it always comes down to education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one doesn't know much about the other until they get educated. Say, oh, I didn't know this. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know all this went down. I didn't know all this, that our brothers were sold for fits of a human and 40 acres and a mule and all that stuff. And then the other side says, oh, I didn't know, Africa had all these buildings and skyscrapers. I didn't know all this. So it's an attempt. And, people writing articles about the dark continent, people saying that Hegel, the philosopher, saying that, we are closer to of all the human race, we are the one closest to the animals and all that. And that's where the term sub-Saharan Africa came from. So because we are subhuman, we are not, fully human and all that. And all these you know, and someone like that was elevated and was seen in high regard. So anything he said was almost gospel. So all these things added up to bring the friction between us. So when people get to educate themselves, then all these notions are dropped. I mean, people who educated themselves, who now have even moved, are living in Ghana,
Absolutely.
are living total different lives. Or people who educated themselves and are, embraced and the culture. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say from the American side, it gets tricky because America, even though we would want to believe that Black people in America are all one thing, right? We want to believe that, but it's a very big difference between a Black person from LA, a Black person from New York, a Black person from North Carolina. We're very different. So there's kind of subcultures within Black America. And I think one of the differences that really divides us has to also do with socioeconomics, right? So even in my lifetime, I grew up very, very low income. And now I've been blessed to do well for myself. And the people are different, right? People interact different. They have different cultures, different things. So what we have come to realize is that, one, America is a tricky place in that they have essentially created an entire program for Black people to hate themselves, right? We're not the beauty standard, right? That's changing, but we grew up in a time where we were not the beauty standard. We were not the primary applicant. We were not going to get the job. There were so many things that were against us that what happened is you see people who either decided to outright reject America and claim Blackness, but like you said, Fred, may not necessarily know a definition of what Blackness is. They know what Blackness is to them. So even though they might wear like Africa pendants or all that stuff, they don't necessarily know Africa, right? So they've created their own kind of mystique. But one of the harsh things, particularly about like low income Black America, is that life is rough. And because life is rough, the kids are going to grow up and be very hurtful and say very hurtful things to anybody that they perceive as being different. And it's not just culturally, it's anything. Like I grew up with kids that were just as poor as me, but they would talk trash about my clothes. Their clothes weren't any better, but it was just the fact that I was the target for that day, right? Likewise, if you are from another country or you speak another language or whatever the case may be, the kids are going to try to fight that because in their mindset, the definition of Blackness is a monolith, right? And that gets tricky when we're dealing with it's Black people who are all over the world. We're a global majority. And so when you don't have education and you don't know what's going on and you haven't been exposed and you don't have friends outside of your own comfort zone, then I think what happens is you create notions and perceptions about who people are. And you live in that perception until somebody is able to get through your outer shell and really pierce your core and help you realize that. I think with social media nowadays, we've been successful in seeing different parts of the world that America has notoriously not shown us. So when it comes to Africa, you know what America's going to show. They're not going to show the wealth. They're not going to show community. They're not going to show any of the things that are positive. They're going to show the old man that looks like Santa Claus playing with kids who probably aren't even in Africa with flies on their face. That's what they're going to show. And they're going to present that image as if this is what an entire continent of people is. And they brainwash people with that imagery. So until folks grow up and they do their research and find out what's going on, they won't know. Yeah, we got to get our sister in here because I'm not understanding. Let's see. Trying to make it. Yes.
Yeah, she's not muted or anything, so I don't know why. Oh, okay. She'll come back on.
Yes.
Yeah, she'll come back on. And the other thing too is that we are very, very, very much related. And I say this all the time. Like even when the 60s, when the Black Power movement and all the uprisings in the 60s happened, was very much connected to what was going on the continent when Ghana had its independence in 1957. And then 1960, most other African countries got their independence. It sparked the race riots, is all the Black Power movements over here, and people. That's why someone like Stokely Carmichael even changed his name to Kwame Ture, named himself after Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame, and then the Ture is the Guinean president who took Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah, who took Kwame Nkrumah in when he was exiled, when he was overthrown from power. So we're very much related. And people like Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, why am I drawing a blank? Maya Angelou, all had a change of life experience when they went to Ghana. But a lot of us don't know that.
Absolutely.
So we're very much related.
Absolutely.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
there we go.
finally.
Got you.
I'm actually using my phone. I don't know what's going on with my laptop.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the lovely Kechi. And Kechi.
I'm having technical difficulties.
It's all right. It happens. Well, did you have something you wanted to say about our topic today?
So, hold on. I'm still trying to log in.
Okay.
So, while I agree that, because Jesse, you did say that based on geographical location and also level of education, that has also contributed to not the divide, but the subsections. But I also feel as if at the core, there has to be a want and a need to be educated on where you're inherently from, not your city or state, where you are inherently from. If you don't have that longing or you don't have that need, it doesn't matter what the white people throw at you, you're still going to end up falling into the trap. And the reason I say this is we all know about the paper bag test and how it was used as a negative measuring tool to divide light-skinned and dark-skinned people. We don't have slavery anymore. We don't have segregation anymore. However, we've now taken it upon ourselves to always use that mentally and say, well, because of certain characteristics, I prefer light skin or I prefer this based off of what are you basing these choices off of, preferences off of? And this is a conversation I have with a lot of my friends. And I think it's maybe being born and raised here. A lot of people just throw the word preference around. But when you leave here, it's like, how is it a preference when you can see, well, as an outsider looking in, you can see it's an indoctrinated ideology. So even though we are the same, we're geographically in different places, you have to have that sense of belonging and that sense of identity. If not, anybody can come and try and put you into a box and you fall into the box. Coming here, I didn't realize how much of identification Americans use as opposed to personality or characteristics. And when I say identification is when I was filling out a form, there was a section for race. Then there was a section for Hispanic, non-Hispanic. Then at the bottom, then there was, what's your gender, what's this? And it's like, every time I come across those sections, even as recent as a couple of days ago, I always ask, what is the importance of this?
Yeah.
Why does it matter if I'm Hispanic, non-Hispanic? Like, what does that do for anybody? What does me filling out a box that says I'm Black, what does it do? But when you see all those questions that you have to fill out, it just shows that even in forms that are supposed to be beneficial or whatever, they're using it to, once again, put you in a box where they can, quote unquote, identify you and then decide if you're safe enough to deal with or if you're going to be problematic. And we, as Black people, have started doing that ourselves. So I don't know. I find it, when I have these type of conversations, it makes me sad because most people don't see it. But it's like, how can you not see it when everything that you do is based on even something as simple as describing somebody you met? The first thing you say is color. And I had this conversation in my social and ethnic minorities class, and some random white girl started crying, and I'm like, I don't even know why you're crying. Because we're talking about like a situation where a cop pulls over a person, and then in the dispatch, the first thing that the cop said, it's this is a black whatever whatever. So I put my hand up and I asked, why is the person's skin color the first thing that's mentioned? You can identify the person without using their skin color. And then I think she said, well, how will you know who the person is if you don't give the skin color? I said, you can still identify the person even without their skin color. But you know, it was a big deal, and I was like, yeah, I think, and I made a comment. I said, I feel as if it's only in America that you use a person's skin color as the first denominator to describe them.
Right.
So I don't know.
Okay. No, I think that's good. So I feel like America is, I always say it's a very tricky place. So our strong point here is branding, right? And what they do is, in order to brand America as a society that allegedly is so multicultural and so accepting and all this so progressive, they say, okay, we're going to establish quota systems, right? Which quotas really are used to force people to do the integration work that they weren't going to do in the first place. But they say, check a box because they want the company to be able to say, oh, we have 6 black people that work here, or whatever the case may be. But what black people know is that if you check black on that box, that means that you're not going to get that job, right? Or the likelihood of you getting that job is not very high. So I've seen black people who check other, I've seen black people who check white, I've seen black people who check all kinds of stuff. And then there's exactly. And then there's no oversight for that quota system. And so to go back to one of your points, I think that you hit the nail on the head when it comes to indoctrination and people's desire to know where they came from. In America, so much of what we have been passed down up to this point is a lack or a gap to stop us from wanting to know. It's almost like they sell to us, oh, you didn't come from anything, so there's no reason to look back. You need to be looking forward. And what happens is people say, okay, well, you know, to go look back, I have to go through Jim Crow, lynching, Emmett Till. Then when you get past that, I got to go through slavery, rape, experimentation on black people, whatever. And that's sad. Like, it's very traumatizing stuff. So people say, I don't want to go back and look through all that. I just want to move forward. But the problem is there's a story even before all of that. And if you never go and do the work to get through all that and actually find out what the story is, you miss out on a huge chunk. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is black people here, we aren't taught in our schools anything about African history at all. So whereas, you know, our entrance into history books here is y'all were slaves, right? You don't know why this happened. You don't know, like, there were situations going on where imperialism was impacting Africa in and of itself. And people want to believe that, oh, well, you know, Africa just rounded certain people up and sold them off and that was it, when that was not the case, right? So if you don't know, then you don't even know the questions to ask to find out what you don't know and to figure it all out. And then as far as the beauty standards go, again, America's strength is their branding. So they've already branded what a beauty standard is going to be. And from the time that you're born, if you don't fit that quote unquote beauty standard, then you're made to feel like you are less than or somehow subhuman, right? And they're going to treat you accordingly until you develop the requisite knowledge of self to be able to step away from that and say, I can create my own beauty standard. I think the most fascinating. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You said something about like the history books don't teach you African history. So growing up, depending on which country or continent you live in, they're going to teach you British history. I didn't grow up learning African history. I grew up learning British history. I can tell you who King Henry VIII was. I can list all 6 of his wives and so on and so forth. I didn't learn African history. When I moved back to Nigeria, I didn't really take history. I took government instead. So I was learning bits and pieces of Nigerian history, but I had interest. Because of the interest, I decided on my own I was going to start learning about Nigerian history, pre-colonial, like way back, and not even just Nigerian history, my specific history, Igbo history. So school is only going to teach you what they feel is best for their own curriculum.
Right.
If you don't want to learn, you're not going to learn. So after you don't make that decision to learn, who are you blaming? Who are you going, like, who is responsible for you not taking that initiative?
Well, that one is kind of tough for me because I feel like in order to know that you need to learn it, you have to have some kind of appreciation for what it was. And I think here we don't start with that appreciation. Like here we're taught white is right, white is this, white is this, white is this. And if from kindergarten forward, that's what you know, then you're not really thinking about anything else. So I think the main thing is for people who have, like, I think especially for people who go to HBCUs, like they're going to force you to learn it, right? Like HBCUs are going to say, no, we're going to talk about Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett. We're going to read this stuff. And when you read it and you're like, wow, you know, we come from greatness, and you start wanting to explore. But the problem is if you don't get that until college, then you don't know. And most people, you don't really get college education. So right. if you don't know what it is that you should care about or what you should know, it gets kind of difficult. And I think that's why like shows like our platform are so important for people who maybe they don't have a college experience, or maybe they didn't know. But if we can say, look, you know, the Black diaspora is multifaceted and it is great. And you can go back and you can look up. We now have like people doing their DNA tests. We have people doing their returns to the continent. We have people doing so much stuff to actually open your eyes to what you came from and understand how no matter where on the planet Black people have been placed, we have found ways to overcome oppression and to become great. You know, and I'll say this too. I think one of the other things that we miss out on in America is I feel like everybody that I've met who is actually from the continent or has spent some significant time on the continent has a sense of identity and a sense of community. And I feel like here it's just dog eat dog, right? It's like
you're very right, because that's one thing that my mom is always saying. She always says that it's like she's always saying you can't really blame some African Americans because they don't have a sense of identity. So they're looking for where to belong.
Right.
And with that, there's always okay, I'm half this, I'm half that, I'm Cherokee, I'm this and that. And then it's like, okay, are you saying this because you belong? Or you're saying this because of, phonetically speaking, you feel as if you say that, the chances of you being seen as other is better than the chances of you being seen as Black. If that makes sense.
Oh, that does make sense for sure. Well, see, this is the thing. Like, I feel like people here don't even know, like people don't want to do the work mainly because the work
not even a little bit
traumatizing, right? So yeah, it's difficult. And I've just been blessed to have a mom who was traveling back in the 60s and who you know, exposed me to all these things really early. But I realize and also appreciate the privilege that not everybody has that experience. So what is troubling to me is, you know, that once you develop a sense of identity, you start realizing all the different ways, all the things that came together to make you, right? So it's not just about the tragedies of slavery and all that stuff. It's also about what about the greatness that you had before you even came to the United States, the greatness that was in your family, in your lineage. And unfortunately, we don't have like a lot of written records and stuff that are passed down to remind you of that greatness. And we don't even necessarily know, for many of us, like who our people were or where they came from without the DNA test, because there's no, we were viewed as property. So we were labeled with like cows and pigs and farm tools, right? So we don't have a way to trace back, like this is who, you know, my great-great-great-great-grandfather was, or whatever the case may be. But I also think, like, you know, there are so many divisions that we just have to, as a people, get past, right? So I guess my big concern is just because you don't know it doesn't give you privilege to hate on somebody else who's from a different culture just because you're not familiar with the culture. That's the first thing.
So,
And,
just listening to you, Jesse, I think it's now clicking. I'm having an aha moment. I'm sorry. I think because of what you said, because they don't know, that I think is at the core of why it seems as if a lot of African Americans don't like Africans. Because I've heard, oh, they said that Africans think we think we're too this, we're too that, we think we're better. And it's like, if they knew their culture, they would understand it's not about thinking you're better. It's about just doing what you have to do to get to where you need to be. Because if you know that a lot of the continent, we have awful rulers, don't even get me started. We have awful rulers. There's no sort of government assistance. You're literally on your own. You understand why somebody who is able to leave there and come here and see, even though there's cracks in the government, they'll rather take cracks than have no government. So they're going to want to do what they can to get to where they need to be, as opposed to somebody who's back there that hasn't been exposed or had the opportunity. But yeah, it's making sense as you're speaking, where you say if they don't know, they're going to just make assumptions. Yeah.
But that all comes down to education again. My point, it all comes down to education, and you're not encouraged to read. And I mean, I came here and I realized on the college curriculum, there's no geography. There's very few colleges that have geography on their curriculum. Correct me if I'm right. There's no geography. So they know, oh yeah. Oh, then he talked to some white folks like, oh, sorry, excuse me, I'm very ignorant about Africa. I didn't know, They'll even tell you that before you even start the conversation. They realize you have an accent. So it all comes down to education, and then coming to that aha moment and saying that, yeah, this is why these groups of people act this way, And I keep saying that we are very much connected than we realize. And that connection is deep. That's why something could happen on 3,000 miles away and could affect the whole world. It didn't only affect the Americas, it also affected the Caribbean. People like Franz Fanon and George Pardmore and all that were fired up and encouraged to start a revolution, by something that happened on the continent.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say, I think also the issue with college is a lot of people view college as a method of getting a better paying job, as opposed to viewing college as a way to expand your mindset and better understand the world. And I'm not here to say one is better. Yeah, and I'm not here to say one is better than the other. But I think it is important for us to also produce like holistic, well-rounded people who understand, stuff is, especially in America, like branding, right? So they're going to brand this place is the best place in the world. There's no place better. Don't even think about going anywhere else. And there are folks who cling to that. People on January 6th were running up on America because they cling to the fact that in their mindset, because they've never been anywhere else, this is all there is. And what I try to encourage people to do is go other places. It's not to say some place might be better or worse. Places are different, right? So some places have things that America doesn't have. Some places have culture that America doesn't have. And I think you become a more holistic person when you've been exposed to other things. And I think it makes you more tolerant, right? Like you can say, somebody can be different from me, because if you go to a country where you are the minority, and that could be racial, that could be religious, that could be whatever. But when you are the minority, then you got to adjust your behavior accordingly to walk through in some of these places around the world. And then you have a better understanding of what people are dealing with when they come here, right? So I think it's education, yes. It's exposing, make sure people read and understand geography and get exposure to traveling and all that. But I also get very disheartened because the people that you see on TikTok, they're not like grown adults like us. These are like teenagers, right? Yeah. And so on one hand, I'm frustrated because it's like, I want y'all to be better. And on the other hand, I'm frustrated. I'm hopeful because they're young and they can still be influenced. But teenagers, I don't understand like how people can get these jaded things. And then whenever I see black people talking about other black people, it just rubs me the wrong way. Maybe because I'm an old man now. It just rubs me the wrong way because it's like, I just feel like, you're talking about yourself. That's like talking about yourself, your own mom, your own family. And so I never understood it. And I know like, people have all kinds of traumas from their past or whatever, but I'm just like, we all do. Like everybody, I don't know anybody who didn't get picked on, right? So at some point, we have to accept this happened. It wasn't right. But now as an adult or as somebody who's turning into an adult, we have to be more open-minded about who we are, what we do, what we try. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So would you say family also has a big part to do with it? So because if Nkechi tells you about her family background, why her mom forced them to know their history, so that caused her to be curious. Mm-hmm. So would you say family also is very important?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because the reality is family is where you get your foundation. Everything else is just an addition to that foundation. So there's the nature versus nurture. Depending on how your family is, that's actually where you're going to get your sense of identity. Mm-hmm. And if you get it pretty early on, you can go anywhere else, do whatever it is, but you still have at the core your sense of identity. It baffles me. Well, it doesn't baffle me. I guess I'm more curious as to why a lot of the teenagers because think about it, if you had kids early, your kids will probably be teenagers right now. Mm-hmm. So what is missing where everybody believes your kids are supposed to be better than you, but it seems as if it's either they're regressing or there is the things that they're supposed to be aware of, they're not aware of it. So it's like the information that we had that we're supposed to pass on to the next generation either didn't get it or we didn't do a good job. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, if that's their foundation, when they have kids, what are they going to pass on to their own children?
Mm-hmm. That's a loaded question. That's big because
what are they going to pass on to their own children?
I think some of it is social media. Like, we live in a very illusory society. So it's about what you can show off as opposed to what you're actually doing. I also think, and I'll just speak like from the kind of Black American perspective, we've had these gaps. So like we had so much traction going into the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. People were doing really well. And then when people started coming up and Black leaders started, pushing us in the right direction, all of a sudden you see like government interference, you see, the distribution of highly toxic drugs that destroy communities, all that stuff. So that kids in the 80s, especially if you grew up in a neighborhood like mine, kids in the 80s were the adults, right? Like we were the ones who were like, we don't have mom and dad here, so we're going to make it work, right? And I think now what we're seeing is those kids from the 80s now have kids. And so we're trying to break generational curses that we haven't even necessarily been able to deal with. But we're trying to prepare because we know now you got access. Before it was like going to college or going to school might have been remote for some of us. But now it's tangible. Now it's something that you can do if you want to. And kids sometimes see the luxury of it, like the benefit of it when, parents are established and, you live in a house that's stable. You don't have to worry about eviction notices or you don't have to worry about bills, cutting your lights off, all this stuff. And you don't always like, you kind of take it for granted sometimes, right? So you're like, oh, this is what life is because everything's been kind of set up for you because we don't want anybody having those same challenges that we had to deal with. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're like, look, it's people who are making money. It was the girl who sold NFTs. Like she sold like $1 million worth of stuff and she's like 13, right? So it's like, it's so much activity and so much stuff that can be happening positive as opposed to, using Mark Zuckerberg's internet or whatever, just to be talking about folks and laughing at folks. Like that to me, that seems like regression. But I don't know if this is just like a thing here or if this is a thing in across. NFTs. It's a non-fungible token. So what people are doing now is they're doing things like little doodles or in some cases like coins if it's a corporation
Crypto.
or whatever. Yeah, and they're selling it on the open market. So folks are paying millions of dollars. I still don't halfway understand it either, but people making big money off of it. So so I want to learn. But yeah, I'm curious, and my question to you all, since you all have some experience outside of America, do you feel like there's a difference in the community and in the education system and opportunity outside of America? Do you feel like there was something different when you came here that didn't exist or that did exist or that was completely foreign from where you were in other places? Because I'm just curious, like with Americans, if we don't travel, we don't get that experience, we just don't know. But sometimes for me, it's like, all right, there are things I like about this country that are cool, but we don't have it, like healthcare. Not gonna put that out there, but things like healthcare that suck here. But there are other countries that I feel like are doing it better. So I don't know if you all have an experience where you've been able to see kind of how is it different, how is it the same. Is it something that we all just need to deal with and suck up and get through? Or is it something that we really need to advocate and come together to change?
Well, I don't know whether I really grasp your question, but then the clearest one is you come from a society where I'm just Fred. I'm just another man. Mm-hmm. But then you come here, then like Kechi said, you now realize, no, this is now like, oh, what do you do? What's your background? What's your religion? What do you believe in? Mm-hmm. You always have to be defined. And that was the biggest shock to me. Like I came from a place where I was just another person. You know, then coming here, no, I realized that no, I have a darker skin tone, So that was the biggest thing for me. And and that was one thing. That's one thing that shouldn't matter. And I mean, I see it a lot more on. I feel it a lot more on the East Coast when I live on the East Coast, where I mean, you have to be. I mean, you are truly different. You feel really different. I mean, of course, there are places here too. When you travel, you just have to go outside the city and you can really feel it. You feel really different, and even there's more tension amongst ourselves on the East Coast. Yeah, I don't know whether I answered. And to have back to the family dynamic, I remember seeing when I was in Philly. I saw a video of a guy who was. He had a disagreement with an older guy. This is a young, probably a 16-year-old. Mm-hmm. And he was punching up on the older guy. And there's this 30-year-old guy there sitting there watching him. Just when he does that, he was about to punch the old man and he cold cocks and, knocks him out cold. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't dare. I mean, and it's over here. So probably that was the gap in the generation where things were progressing, 50s, 60s, 70s, and then there's a gap from the 80s to the 90s where people were not I would say our children or little brothers were not brought up well. But you always respect your elders. It doesn't matter whether they are related to them or not. You always respect your elders, and that's something that's missing. And that's one thing too that I realized that I like, oh, who are you? It doesn't matter if you're 10 years older than me, I can talk to you anyhow. Right. I'm my own man.
Yes. Just really quick, what Fred said, that's something else that I noticed, and it shocks me so much because it's like nobody has. First of all, I have a problem with the way that within our community here, especially if people are fighting, people don't try and separate them. Instead, what people are doing is pushing other people that are watching back to give them space to fight. We don't do that. If two
Okay.
people are fighting or in the process of fighting, there are going to be people who separate them from the drum. And then seeing the lack of respect that the younger people have for the older people, I always ask myself, it's funny how people who used to make music in the 60s, the older white people, there is always a level of respect that people give them. Whether they were one hit wonder, or even if you know what, if you didn't know the song, you don't know the song, there's always a level of respect that they give them. For our stars, we don't have respect for them.
Mhm.
Nobody has any problem going back and forth with an elder who laid foundation for you to be able to even speak up.
Right.
Every other day, there's a young person either on TikTok, on Instagram, going back and forth with an elder, talking smack, saying, I'm better than you, or I make more music than you, I make more money than you. And it's like, you have that opportunity because they went through stuff, so you could have that opportunity. What part are you missing that you owe them?
Mhm.
And then, secondly, like Fred also said, maybe it's an East Coast thing, but when I first came here, I still have an issue with when I'm filling out forms when they ask about church denominations. I have a problem. I don't know what any of them mean.
Mhm.
So it's like, why does it matter? Like, what are you using this information for? But when you're asking about healthcare, out of all the places I've lived, I think the best healthcare was maybe in England
Okay.
because they have free healthcare for everybody. So even if you're like you live there for, I don't know if it still is this way now, but I know that we were there in England for a year and were able to get free healthcare. Here, it's a little different. You have to go through the system to be able to get health insurance, and if you don't have health insurance, then everything is astronomically more
Mhm.
expensive for you to pay. And it's like, hmm, if I fill on the form I'm unemployed and I don't have a source of income, how do you think I'm going to be able to afford the healthcare that is $10,000?
Mhm.
How does that make sense? So healthcare abroad is, depending on where you are in Europe, is better. In Africa, not so much. It's in Africa is you have to pay before you get service.
Okay.
So if you don't pay half or deposit, they're not going to treat you. So after paying, they'll treat you a little bit. Then it's like, okay, well, you haven't finished paying, so we're not going to finish treatment.
Mhm.
So we have that's another problem that we have there. But when it comes to being culturally aware, somebody in the village can tell you that they know a place called New York City back home. Somebody in a village here in America cannot tell you, list one city on the continent of Africa. Not one.
Oh, I got that. I got that.
No, you're
I,
not. You're not even in the. I'm talking about somebody like who lives in somewhere. They cannot
Rural,
even list
rural area.
Mhm.
one place,
Mhm.
not even a little bit. So that just goes to just that example alone goes to show you the difference in being culturally aware here versus abroad.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, here is considered first world. Back home is
Okay.
considered third world. But we can list a city, even if it's just one. But here, nobody can list one city on the continent of Africa
Mhm.
with all the technology that we have here.
And yeah, that's another thing to know that I remember when I had a slideshow, and I plan to have another slideshow. One of when I had a slideshow, and a lot of people were shocked that Africa is the second largest continent by
Continent, yeah.
size and population, over 1 billion people,
Mhm.
and then it has 54 countries, and it's 4 times, almost 5 times the size of the US. So
Mhm.
US, just Congo and all we have to take is Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. That's more than half the US. That's
Mhm.
one country, and then
Mm.
add probably Algeria and Nigeria, and that's more than the US. Those are three
Yeah.
countries. Yeah,
Mhm.
of course they also make up a lot of the land on the continent. So when people get to know that, like, wow, yeah, it's not just they're not just some people. There's a lot going on on
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
continent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm with everything that you all said. I think that A lot of it, again, I always harp on the branding of America, and like kind of when somebody shoves down your throat that this is as good as it gets, blah, 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 it turns a lot of people off to looking outside of America.
Mhm.
They just say, all right, well, I got to make it work here. I also get, what you're saying about different ways that healthcare operates. And I think that's also important because England, shout out to them, they're doing it right. Like it's supposed to be, you shouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg for healthcare when you need to fix your arm and leg in the first place. So
just before you go on, I took a health economics class.
Okay.
And that professor is one of the top risk managers in all of the US.
Mm-hmm.
You know what he told me? He said never pay full price for healthcare if you can afford it.
If you yes.
You know what he said? He said it's 3 times the cost. So
Yes.
what's happening when you pay for it? You're paying for 2 other people. You're not just paying for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying for 2 other because they know everyone can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So once you pay, you're paying you're paying maybe $500. The real cost of what the procedure or whatever is about $180. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to catch you, Justin.
Oh no, well that's good. I think America, like the other thing, if the second thing we're good at is rackets. So I think insurance is a racket because they take your money every month and they try to say, okay, well if something happens to you, we'll provide so much coverage or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when something happens, it's like, oh, we were only going to provide 40% of the coverage. You still got to come out of pocket with the rest. And you're like, I don't have it. Like, ooh, looks like you got to go back to work then. So that's kind of how it works. And it's like a weird system. But the reason we have that is because there's so many people, particularly in government office or whatever, who benefit from that. Like we look at everything here as a business. And there's this concept that government should be a business, right? And what we know as human beings is that everything is not a business. It should not be a business, particularly government should not be a business. So when I get frustrated a lot of times because I look at America and all the stuff that people love about it, the superpower, the democracy, all that stuff. But it's literally sitting on money that slavery built for it. Right? Money that it would probably never go broke for unless they do stupid deals and end up squandering it with war and all that stuff. They have money that they're sitting on from cotton, tobacco, all the stuff that slaves did. They didn't pay us. We never got paid. But they've got this money they're sitting on and they can be so involved in everybody else's affairs. They can transport tanks and planes and bombs and everything everywhere else. But when Black people here say, well, we like free healthcare and education, it's a problem, right? That's like you asking for too much. And so that's my frustration here.
But do you think that if we were, not to cut you off, but do you think if we were genuinely united, like if we came together as a community to speak on that, we'll be able to make, even if it's 2 steps, we'll be able to make that shift? I feel as if whenever people come up and say, okay, we need this, we need that, there's always some random person, Ben Carson, that would just come from nowhere and say, no, we don't need that. We're good. And it's like, for crying out loud, sir, for the sake of us being united, could you just keep your trap shut so we can get something done? But that's literally always what happened. You have your idea, I have my idea, Fred has his idea, we come together. But then one random person will come and say, hey, Nkechi, you know what? I don't think it's a good idea for you to even join them. Next thing you know, before anything has even taken off ground, I'm now saying, yeah, I don't think those two, they're probably going to be conspirators. You need to watch out for them. We're not united enough. We are not united enough. That's why a lot of things are not getting done the way they should be done.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, let's acknowledge Jarda. Hi, Jarda.
Hey, John.
Hey, Jarda.
Awesome points. Thanks. And she said, genuine unity is a foreign concept and contrary to the capitalist democracy we were raised in.
Yes, she's absolutely right.
Absolutely.
She's very right. Because think about how, the Jewish people went through Holocaust. but they were united in the pain that they felt.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't but look for ways to make sure their life was easier moving forward because they were united in that pain.
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust didn't happen to the Africans, but we too, we felt their pain.
Mm-hmm.
We're not united enough for people to sympathize with us to say, you know what, since they're all crying with one voice, I can feel their pain. So let me try and see what I can. No, we don't do that because we always act as if, yeah, just forget about it. Yeah, it's all happened, 200, 300 years ago. It's not a big deal. Yes, it is, because people are still benefiting off what's happened 200 and 300 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to add to Kechi's points, like exactly when all the George Floyd incident happened, and now people were having second thoughts. People who had preconceived notions for a long time.
Yeah.
CEOs. One of my friends who is a vice president of in a U.S. bank, was talking about how the CEO called him to say, what can they do differently after that incident happened. But then you have someone like Candace Owens come up and say, oh, this guy put a gun to a woman's belly, this guy did this guy, so he's human, so he deserves to die, right? I'm like,
right.
It was really upsetting to hear that from her.
Well, I think, that's another one of those like vestiges of slavery, right? So you always had a black overseer or somebody who you would give a little bit more money or a little bit more food or a little bit more status to sell out what everybody is doing. So Candace Owens makes a lot of money. She's paid. Ben Carson, a lot of money. He's paid. But the whole thing about it is I don't subscribe to the notion that Candace Owens or Ben Carson has the power to co-opt a movement of the people. I think that they can always present and they're always going to be marched up front because they're willing to sell out their people. But I also think that
they have about 500,000 followers on Twitter.
They have movements. They literally have people who quote them and like on both sides. I sound like from now on both sides, both white and black people who follow and listen to her. If she didn't have a movement, you wouldn't know who she is. I wouldn't. I definitely would not know who she is. She has a following. So does Ben Carson. And if they were to be united and keep their mouth shut, we'd be able to people wouldn't say, oh, look, use Ben Carson as the token N-word or use her as the token and say, well, obviously we're doing stuff right because look at them. They're successful ends. They're very dangerous. They're very dangerous people to even have to open their mouth because they are the ones that people look to and say that these are the people who are, they're living well off because the system works. And the rest of us are just whiners.
Well, see, that's the power of money. See, people respect folks with money. So I think that because they have money, people follow them because they think, oh, they must be doing something right. And I reject that. See, the problem is, especially here, the people who represent the ideas of the community, they get shot. They die. No, they do. Like Martin Luther King is gone. Malcolm X is gone. Huey Newton gone. Like those people are gone. But the folks who will say, look, y'all can resist peacefully, just do it over there where white people can't see you, or whatever the case may be. Like those folks get elevated. Yes. And that's the problem. So here's my thing. To go back to your question, Kechi, I think it was a great question. I don't think that our unity necessarily does anything to the American apparatus to make the government say, let's act right. I don't think it does that. What I think it does is it shows us that we don't have to unilaterally rely on the American apparatus to do it. So my thought process is when you start a business, you need, usually you need a bank loan, right? We got banks in other places besides America. We got banks that people can set these things up. If there's trust amongst the community, we can go around the American apparatus to make it work. And this is one of the things like I really value when you talk about like they're talking about the tunneling. Fred knows about this, the tunneling in California, where like people from Mexico are able to get items into America and build a whole economy off of that. Yeah. You don't need the American apparatus. You can do what you need to do to get around it, to make a business or to make something happen. And I think that's what I want to see. I want to see us getting to a point where, we got folks in the Caribbean, we got folks in continental Africa, we got folks in, Europe or whoever, who have already positioned themselves to be financier or position themselves to do some needed service for the community. And we're just working independent of that. But it's going to require trust. It's going to require relationship. It's going to require goodwill. Probably going to require going back to those, Pan-African councils that they used to have back in the early 1900s. But we're going to have to do something, because I feel like the way doesn't work. And I'm not even saying this from like a unilateral standpoint, because I think there are skills that Black Americans have that we can also put through that same dynamic to help out our brothers and sisters in other places too. So, even now, I know that there was a big boom for like a big need for like energy in certain parts of Kenya, where they had people who were coming over, basically folks who were leaving America. They went over to Kenya because they've been working on that. And now they can actually be valued for the work that they were doing in somebody's cubicle here, right? So I think we have skills and traits that we can put together to make it, but it takes a lot. And I think sometimes it's discouraging because it takes so much work that people are like, nah, I'd rather just go to work and get my paycheck and just deal with the apparatus. But you never are going to progress if we continue to do it. I always think back to if Martin Luther King had said, integration, that's a big thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just gonna deal with what we got here. Or if Malcolm X was like, that's too much, right? So we're just gonna do it here. We wouldn't be where we are, but we're from bold stock, right? And I think because of that, we have a responsibility to future generations to try, even if it may not necessarily look like what we envision. We have to try, because America's not going to come through for Black people. I'm sorry. Hate to break it to you. Spoiler alert. America's not going to come through for us. So we have to do it for ourselves and show them that we can do it independent of the apparatus. We can take advantage of the educational facilities, the healthcare facilities, whatever the case may be, and garner the information and garner the technology. But then we take it and do what we want with it. So that's my position. I see Toju's on here.
Jada says empathy is experienced as a threat to individual success.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then Toju says, how do you account for the paradox itself, trying to break up the trust within the community?
Great question. I mean, I guess for me, I just feel like the apparatus itself is already embedded in the community. Like every great Black American civil rights leader had J. Edgar Hoover in their, on their tails. Like there's nobody who was free to escape that. And I think his apparatus that he set up is already, listening. They've got, stuff on our computers and everything. So they know, right? But at the same time, I feel like that doesn't stop a movement. They can try to, thwart it. They can try to pit people in to deter it. But one of the things that I get frustrated about is we've been doing peaceful protests now for pretty much every basic civil right you can ask for. Like, police don't kill us, peaceful protest. We want to vote, peaceful protest. Like these are basics. And I feel like we're at a point that I want equity. Like I want to be equally included in a society that my ancestors built. And
Fact.
I don't want, basic handouts of crumbs. And I feel like we have to be willing to say peaceful protest may not be the route to go. Maybe if we got 1 million people, I mean, you see what white people did on January 6th with, less than 1 million people.
I was just about to say they were not even up to 1 million.
Right. And now you got congressmen that don't even want to approve stuff, Democratic congressmen at that, who don't even want to approve stuff for their own constituents because of the influence of this group of radicalized folks. And we know it wouldn't turn out the same way for Black people, but we also know that we've got much bigger things that we've been asking for than just a no mask mandate, right? So I feel like it has to be something. And if we look on a global scale at all the things that Black people in any place need, I think it always comes down to like basic infrastructure at the end of the day. It's like, look, we can't rely on the government systems that we have in whatever place to do what is best for the people. So how about we all get on some kind of global tangent of our own to say we're going to supplement where the government is short until we have the resources and the ability to change up the way that things work. But again, I can't say it's going to be like a clean thing. I can't say that everybody's going to make it out of this and be happy and celebrating, because we know how the government gets down. So, you know, I think I just want people, if nothing else, to take a more global viewpoint of resources that we have to use, and to understand that every Black person, no matter whether you are in a small village or in a big city, every Black person has a contribution to make. You're worth something. You matter. And we want you to bring those contributions and help establish whatever this is that we're going to establish to try to get what we need. And then I think once you find a way to get the money without the apparatus, then the apparatus has to deal with you, because otherwise you'd be like, oh, we don't need you. No, we don't feel like paying taxes no more. Sorry, Fred. Sorry.
Well, this conversation, because I keep getting new new things. I keep coming up with new things to ask and to add to the discussion, but we can go on this discussion. We're 1 hour into the show already. Mm-hmm. But today, something we haven't done in a while. I wanted to give out what do you call it? Do a trivia.
Oh, trivia.
We have Toji, we have Jada, we have a few people online joining us today. First of all, I have to. Okay, maybe I'm going to add. Maybe Kechi might be cheating. Kechi, she might get it. I'll just add. Okay, everyone, including Kechi and Jesse. What is the capital of Mauritania? And you have 10 seconds.
No, I don't know how to pronounce it.
No, you have to. You have to. Okay, type it out. You can type it out, and then.
I don't even know how to spell it, but I know it's N-O-U. I think C-H-O-U-T. I'm awful, but is that correct?
Yeah. No, watch out. That's why I said Nkechi will be cheating. So I actually expected Toju to get that one, but anyway. Okay. Was that delayed, Toju, or you just copied me? Okay, you spelled it wrong, so yeah. So we'll probably go through. I mean, some of the African countries, they're easier. Their capitals are easier to come up with, but some not so much. So we'll probably be going through that every now and then. Sometimes the show we go over time and all that, so that's why we couldn't get to the trivia. But that's it. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, The PanAfricana Show, at The PanAfricana Show. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. I'll get in touch with you. I guess you and Kitty will have to share.
Yes.
Share.
The Amazon gift card. Okay, Kechi actually got it first. So.
I am not sharing my gift card.
Yes, and if you are interested in being a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out on our Instagram page at the PanAfricana Show. We would love to have you. We have some open slots available, so definitely reach out. Let us know. We'll get in contact with you. Likewise, if you are in need of cool merch, go ahead and go to our StreamYard. And somebody said she does not share. So
she doesn't share.
Yes, definitely go to our Spreadshirt site and place your order. If you're in North Carolina right now, it's snowing outside. Bet you wish you had your hoodie today. So anyway, make sure that you get that. And we will be back. So make sure you join us every Saturday 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern, 9:30 to 10:30 Pacific, and 5:30 to 6:30 GMT. Is that right?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes. So definitely feel free, and don't feel like if you are in a different continent or a different country that we can't make it work. We had somebody on here from the Philippines. We can make it work. We can make it work.
Oh, link for the shirt. Let me get it.
Yes.
Jesse, go on. Let me get a shirt. The link for the.
Yes, please do. And Desjardins, I need your address because we got to get you one too.
Oh yeah. Not
on the show. Send it to me privately.
Kichi, any last thoughts while I find this?
No, this was interesting. I like having conversations like this. I just know that we need to be more. I always say unity is the first step for everything. Absolutely. If you're not united, I mean, even the Bible says it, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm in their midst. If you're not united, you can easily fall for anything.
Exactly.
Oh, and I like the trivia.
Yes. And we got to get Fred's slideshow back because his slideshows are always impressive. So we have to get a Fred slideshow episode.
Okay. So this is the link to a spreadsheet shop. shop.spreadshirt.com/PanAfricana-shop and all. And then you can get a shirt for yourself. There's some pretty cool shirts that Kichi has, and all the sisters related to us have. My wife, my sister has has that, and then the other Nkechi's and her husband also have theirs. So yeah,
absolutely. And when you get the shirt or the hoodie or whatever you get, please tag us. Take a picture, put it on Instagram, tag us, let us celebrate. Yes, and we want to celebrate you rocking those shirts, and just you joining us as we build whatever this apparatus is going to be that we're going to change the world with. So definitely join us. We're looking forward to seeing you all in future weeks or possibly as a guest on the show. And with that, you all have a great week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.